The other night, I just moved to Austin, Texas. I went out to dinner with a group of highly successful men, and this one guy who showed up out of nowhere, Josh Terry. And the instant I met this guy, he hooked me by telling me he was a burnout coach because I have a tendency to burn out, and it's something I've been really working on. But the more I looked into this guy, Josh Terry, the more depth I saw of the content and the impact he was creating. And I wanted to get to know him a little bit better. So instead of doing this off camera, I thought we'd sit down and have a conversation on camera where I could learn more about Josh. And we could also just go to the depth of his story of how he got to where he's at, where it all started, what life was like early, how he transformed through it all to become the person he is today, where he's serving 1.8 million people across all social platforms. Josh, thank you for being here today. This is something that excites me just to understand your story, and it's a big part of what I wanted to do of just hear your story. So where do we even start, man?
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited as well. And let's start at the beginning.
All right. First question. Actually, this first segment, I structured this into 5, 6 sections so that we could really dive into deep aspects. The first is, who were you before all of this? And let's just start with that question. I want to see where you take us and then how we can navigate through that a little bit.
Okay. I started out as the talented kid. I was homeschooled and bright and curious about everything. And so it started with martial arts, wood carving, Boy Scouts, swimming, learning every single fish in the fish catalog. I lived in Florida, 5 minutes from the beach, and my dad was spent his 30s living on a sailboat. And we had a 1 acre yard that I'd just go run out to play. And so a large portion of my education was from my parents, and then the other part was from my backyard. And so I learned a lot of practical physics, falling out of trees and, getting knocked over by waves. I always tested really well in physics, even though I wasn't taught a lot when I was young, because I learned it by the practical way. Um, uh, and I went to college when I was age 15 years old, and that's when I started my sort of official collegiate education. And at that point, I decided to major in music.
Okay, that's a curveball. We just got to highlight that curveball, but I see how it's already serving you.
Yeah, no. So I got a violin at the age of 9, and I started taking violin and piano lessons. And we grew up. We weren't wealthy,
Okay.
we grew up. My mom did something that was really incredible, which is when I was very young, she got a bunch of books like Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, what's the Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Okay.
all the classics, and she read those to us because she knew that we didn't have all the opportunities or all the knowledge that we needed at that time, but she thought, hey, let me give these kids a leg up and help them find a way. And in actuality, like there were some books that the family wouldn't finish, and I would go back and I'd pull them off the shelf
Wow.
and I'd finish them
So your
myself.
curiosity was just explosive. It's oozing.
Yes, and I wanted success. Whatever this success thing was, where you could afford more cheese at the grocery store, I was into it.
I love
Like
that.
this seemed like a great idea to me. And so I soaked up everything that I could. And one of the things that happens when you're coming out of less wealthy situation, one of the mindsets, they talk about scarcity mindsets and poverty mindsets and all those things. One of the things that comes out is this mindset of like, this is my ticket out
Yeah,
mentality.
100%.
And sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's very misleading.
Yes.
And so one of the logics that I went through at that time was, oh, well, I've studied music more than most things.
Mhm.
And so I know something there. And so maybe this is my edge. Maybe this is my ticket out. And I loved music, but there was this mentality sort of like, I gotta hang on to whatever knowledge I've already consumed, and I gotta find a way to make this be useful in the world and make this profit.
Almost like you're so invested in it, there's no exit but to keep going, even though it might start to feel like it's not fitting so well.
Yes, yes. And also, like, to be real, like, I loved music, like, that wasn't fake. But there was this underlying thing going on.
Yeah, what was that? What was that?
Yeah, yeah, it was check it out. Like, I wanted to be successful, I didn't know how,
Mhm.
and I wanted a way.
Yeah.
And so, went to college at 15. At 16, I decided I'm gonna become a rock star. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. That's how I'm gonna make it big.
Okay.
Which, in hindsight, you don't necessarily think of this as, like, the most straightforward logic,
Yeah.
but it was the best thing that I could come up with,
Mhm.
and I wanted that. And, so I decided to major in music. I was going to a community college 5 blocks north of the hood, and so it was a rather interesting location. And during that time, I mean, I was at an age where it was quite intimidating, right? I was 15, 16, and I was around college age kids. And I was taking a lot of classes. By the time I was 17, I was taking more than the average full time student. And I started to ask the question, instead of how do I get an A in this class, I started to ask the question, how do I get A's? Which is actually a very different question.
Yeah, going from really specific to very general in a sense, right?
In a sense. Yeah.
And I already see this bleeding into your simplicity of your mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And and always when I got into these hobbies, painting, wood carving, whatever, martial arts, uh, on one hand, I would be very specific, but on another, I wanted to know the big picture of how this thing worked. When you ask the question, "How do I get an A?" you just look for the single solution that will give you that thing.
Yeah.
But if you ask, "How do I get A's?" you look for the meta solution of like, what helps me win in life.
Yeah, what is the concept? What is the frame?
Yeah, and so the first one that I came across was, oh, if I ask the professor the question that he wishes his students would ask, then I will get the answer and I will know how to get an A.
That is amazing psychology. How'd it work?
It worked really well.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah. And so I started getting good at asking questions. But it wasn't just getting good at asking questions. I was trying to understand the professor, right? Because a professor can teach history, but history is big, right? And so what did the professor really want me to know about history? Right? And if it was one of those professors that cared about the lessons and didn't care about any of the dates, and he could get you to understand the core 3 lessons that he really wanted you to know, and you could ask that question and get that, like, really nailed home, you just put that on the test and you're done.
Yeah, because 'cause you're essentially bypassing the thousands of pages with knowing the concept, and as somebody with a bio background, I was like, I tried to memorize all through college, and then my teacher's like, "No, understand the concept," and until I got into nursing, I was like, "Oh, I get it. If you know the concept, you know everything. There's no trick question. It's about just simply nailing it to the specific being asked."
Yeah, and this is extremely valuable in most places in life. It served me the opposite in one particular place, which is, I was taking an algebra course, and she was hyper specific about you have to do it this way,
Mhm.
and I actually learned a new way to solve a math problem for the
Yeah.
first time in my life. Like, I didn't know that, like, equations could be solved in different ways, but I was really struggling with this equation. And I actually like discovered a different way that wasn't in the book. And I was like, wow, that solves it. And I like very excitedly, I went to my professor and I was like, hey, like, is this right? This isn't the process that you showed us, but is this right? And she looked at it and she went through it and she got really excited. She said, yeah, this is great. Like you did this was really smart and like intuitive to figure this out. I said, awesome. So if I did that on the exam, would that work? And she said, no, I'd fail you.
That's mind blowing, but I mean, that's the classic school model, right?
Yes.
It's like, here's the system, here's the process, here's the box, you have to go through it, and then there's intuitives and creatives like
Yeah.
us that are like,
Yeah.
"No, here's a simpler way." But they're like, "No, shame on you for
Yeah.
thinking outside the box."
Yeah, she was like, "This is fantastic." No, I'd fail you, like, absolutely.
Even in the summary, like, you found your intuition, your curiosity, and
Yeah.
created something new, so you found your own innovative edge at a very young age, which sounds like it's brought you a lot of good things since.
It brought me a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages. And so the advantages were this insatiable curiosity, this, inventiveness, the ability to understand meta concepts and things like this. The disadvantages, one of the primary ones was I was very agreeable and very accepting of the way people told me things were. And so, like as a little kid, that would be, the butt of the jokes were like, "Ah, he's so gullible" jokes,
Mhm.
which I wasn't really gullible. I was just like, I would just take things at face value.
Yeah.
So people would just say a thing and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's the way." And then people would be like, "No, ha ha ha, we pulled one over." And I was like, "Pulled one over on what?"
Yeah, like,
Like, you told me it was that way, so sure.
yep.
And what this came out in later in life that was really difficult was um people said if you study really hard in college and get good grades, then when you get done, you'll have a good life.
Mm. Man, I fell into that trap too.
Yeah, like you'll be able to get a good job and you'll have a career waiting for you because that's what college marketing is.
Yep.
And I graduated with nothing. Graduation day actually was one of the saddest days of my life.
Yeah.
This might be jumping ahead a little in the story, but walking down the aisle, felt so lost and so alone. I watched all these kids celebrating, and I went, wow, I have unmanageable student debt, and I learned nothing about how to make money. And that was ultimately what I wanted. But I went in telling people I wanted to be successful, and people said, "Okay, do it this way," which was, of course, do it in the way that's most profitable to them and do it in the way
Yep.
that doesn't bother them, and so on and so forth. And
Mhm.
so I was not the rebel. I was not the maverick that people talk about on magazines of like, "Oh, he was, so rebellious, breaking the rules and doing things all his way when he was young." I was like, "Oh, like I grew up in a conservative Christian culture." And I went, "Okay, so this is the religion, the politics that I was taught." I said, "Okay, these are the politics and the processes I was taught, the ways to move towards success." And, yeah, the last 2 years of college, I went to the University of Miami to go to a rich kid school because I wanted to figure like, again, I wanted success. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I
Surround
don't know that
yourself
this
by
music
them.
thing is helping me, but, like, what are the other
Yeah.
rich people doing?" And then I went there and they said, "Well, study hard and obey the rules and get good grades and it'll work out." And so I did that. And then it hit me like the day of graduation walking down the aisle. I was like, "Oh, all those kids that were like slacking off and then taking methamphetamines to practice for their final,
Yep.
the day before and then acing it, whereas I was, you know, working as hard as I could the whole time." They were spending the rest of their time having parties and getting to know their rich friends and their rich friends' dads, and they're all gonna go to jobs, and I'm not.
Yeah.
And, I took a lot of things really literally. And it's was the same with self-development advice.
Mhm.
Self-development advice said, "Work hard." Self-development said, "Push yourself, challenge yourself." And so I graduated as a workaholic, a burnout, anorexic, and,
Wow.
I I slept for 2 weeks after that. And then I walked out of the house like a zombie and got a job doing manual labor because I didn't know what else to do because I was already done.
Yeah. Man, thank you for sharing that. That is dude, that's deep. That's very relatable to my path as well of this similar, like, hard work. If there's one word I learned from my father and my family, hard work, hard work. Hard work is happiness is a nutshell.
Mhm.
Completely untrue. And it's derailed aspects of my life, and it sounds like it derailed aspects of your life all the way from your your emotional well-being, your body, your health, I mean, across the board. But it also created something great.
Yeah.
And before we get to something great, what was something I wanted to go a little bit deeper into there was what was the conditioning like growing up for you as a kid? Was hard work were you rewarded for high achieving? Like, you get all A's across the board and
Yeah.
then you got something good? Because personally, in my experience, it was like I didn't understand how I was conditioned to be a high achiever
Mhm.
based on the reward system, but when there weren't any rewards, there weren't any claps, but I was still doing the same.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, your perspective of how that was the
Yeah.
foundational of your youth to your
Yeah.
adolescence.
So, first of all, I had a great childhood, I was loved and cared for in all the good ways, and everyone did the best that they could. It was just the principles that I picked up from my childhood. I can tell you it starts very early. I can remember a very early memory. I was sitting outside in the backyard looking at the garden, and we were at grandma's house, and everybody was doing a yard work day to fix up grandma's gardens and her yard and make everything pretty. And it really gives you some insight into like what my base psychology
I
was
love
at the
this.
time. And so I was sitting there, I was just sitting there, just staring at the garden and just looking at the mulch and looking at the plants. And my grandma walks up and she goes, "Josh, what are you doing? You're supposed to be weeding. Don't sit there when we need to be weeding." And she was very loving grandma, but she was just, like, "Hey, like, get to work.
Yeah, there's work to do.
Yeah,
What are you
there's work
sitting
to do.
for?
That we were gonna weed, and that's what we're doing. What are you doing to sit there?" And I just remembered feeling this terrible, innocent shock in my mind of like that she thought I wasn't trying to help.
Grandma's calling me lazy.
Yeah, grandma, and I looked at her and I went, "Grandma, I was trying to figure out how we could never weed again."
Oh, I love that. And that captures your essence so well.
Yeah, because I was looking at the garden trying to figure like, "Okay, this mulch stuff, it makes weeds go away. How do we make that more effective?" And I just read a couple gardening books as a little kid, and I'd gotten really excited about gardening, and I was just horrified because I was like, "I'm trying to help here."
Yeah, you're over here, your grandma's focused on specific, and you're like, "Grandma, there's a bigger
Yeah, there's
problem.
a bigger problem. We
Instead of
gotta fix
instead
this.
of fine-tuning the little details, let's figure out the whole system here."
Yeah.
But grandma was probably a little resistant to that.
Yeah, of course, and it's like German work ethic and all that, and the reality is you have to get the work done, and this is one of the conflicts between different personality types and different realities is life never moves forward without inventiveness,
Yeah,
but life dies if you don't do the work, and
100%.
so they're both extremely important, and so I grew up in a background that encouraged us all to stay alive, right? And that's not bad. And it's just that with it, you can get flipped to different narratives that are not quite right. And so an example of that that was one where it's like, okay, so I have to work.
Yeah.
Like I should be doing. If I'm not doing, that I'm bad, right? So that was kind of one thing that I picked up. And again, this is like it's not that they gave me the lessons that poorly. It was just this is how I
Yeah,
picked it
it's
up,
the
right?
early mindset and conditioning that you were
Yeah.
starting to embody.
Yeah. And then another one was for example, we would do tests at the end of the year. Homeschoolers take end of the year tests once a year to keep tabs on them. And so I would take the end of the year test and I would always post high school. Like I got phenomenal grades. It would be like 89, 98, 99 kind of
Yeah,
thing.
as close to 100 as
Yeah,
possible.
really close
Oh,
on
man.
very big, very thorough tests. And each time my mom would look at them and then she'd go, "Oh, that's really good. Okay, so let's look at the ones where we went wrong."
Oh, so the fine tune on imperfections.
Yeah, and so I became a hardcore perfectionist in my life. And again, these messages, they're not bad, right? Oh, hey, you're getting a 98. Let's find out how to get a 100. But depending on how the message is put across and depending on the psychology of the child, in my case, like very taking things literally,
Yeah,
then, the person can pick up different lessons. And so for me, in my case, I would just like, became a very obsessive person.
yeah.
And as we go in more into the story, after I graduated, a lot of my struggles were me getting very obsessive, very perfectionist, just trying to solve everything with work, and learning to break those habits and balance them with other lessons.
Man, that's a perfect transition to where I was wanting to take this because even like a quick reflection back to what you're saying is like you were doing what you were told and it was working very well for you, but then everybody was like, no matter what, you're perfectionist. Here's these imperfections. And it, like even in hearing you say that, it's like I can relate to that. It's like I was showing up trying to do the best, but no matter what, there's just this 5% I can't beat and it's driving me insane. Where did that essentially number of like 5% in your life of imperfection lead you and what kind of path did that walk you down?
Yeah. So the the path of of perfectionism, um, it got me very obsessive. And so I was in music. When I got out of college, I got a construction job for a while because I just was so blown out. I couldn't. But eventually, I got a job teaching music, and I moved to Austin, Texas, live music capital of the world, and I joined 5 bands at the same time. I was doing everything I could to try to move forward in life and hustling. Um, but then I'd go and I'd try to record, and I'd record a take, and I'd be like, "Man, that sounds pretty good. Oh, but there's this one thing off, you know?" And so, okay, well, let me record like half of it to see if I can do it a little bit better. And oh, well, that's better. There's still this little thing. So let me record half of that. So now I'm recording, 1 second of material. And well, it's not quite right. And let me record like 50 takes of that just to make sure that that's right. And any music producer who's listening to what I say is part of them is like smiling and nodding their head and be like, "Yeah, that's how you do it," which it is.
Welcome to the process,
Yeah,
Josh.
this is until it became 500 takes,
Yeah.
and it became 1,000 takes, and it was never quite right.
What was the max amount of takes you ever had?
I have no idea.
I was just curious.
But I can tell you, I would go to parties and I would go to social events where other musicians that I knew who had a finished album, they'd maybe they were doing an album release. They'd be like, "Yeah, man, we worked really hard on this track in particular. We worked really hard. We did 5 takes," and I'd want to throw up
Yeah, I would say so.
because I got so caught in these types of behaviors. On the surface, you would just diagnose it as OCD
100%.
when it was mostly a mindset issue. Later I did get OCD because I also had major health issues, and that made it even worse. Um, but yeah, it was a spiral of perfectionism that wasted time, and then perfectionism that created anxiety because it was so much. Whereas like, well, I can't get anything right. No matter what I do, I'm in trouble. No matter what I do, I'm doing it
Yeah,
wrong.
victim mindset almost. It's just like no matter what, everything I'm doing is causing havoc
Yeah.
somewhere. So why do anything at all?
Yeah, I engineered victimhood.
Yeah.
I engineered victimhood. And my life didn't change until I learned how to engineer something else.
Wow. Before we could have had to engineer something else, how hard was it for you as a creative? And it sounds like kind of a struggling creative when you moved
Mhm.
here. How hard was it for you to gain momentum that was replicatable with that many takes? Because as someone who does a lot of video work and editing, I run into that same problem of like, oh, it looks perfect until I start editing it. Then I notice these little things, and then it's like, all right, so a video that we are going to post tomorrow is pushed back a month, and then it never gets posted because these slight imperfections.
Yeah. It was psychologically, logistically, and physically impossible. And I mean that factually. And this is something I do when I coach people as well, is I go I say, Let's take a look at your situation and let's see if there's any way that this math actually maths."
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're depressed. Is there actually any way that you, in your current situation, wouldn't be depressed? If the answer is no, then we have our work cut out.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear, right? Is there any way, logically, that you wouldn't be burnt out in this moment in your work? A lot of times it's super explainable.
Yeah, well, even in saying that, I'm reflecting on my own life, and I'm like, I can tell you every time I burned out and why.
Yeah, it made perfect sense. Like, looking at it, it's like, this is logical. And so a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I need to stop making emotional decisions," when they, like, fall off the bandwagon of a positive habit they're trying to establish. Or,
Mhm.
"I need to stop, getting myself to, make these unreasonable decisions," when they, like, start, choosing things that they shouldn't be choosing. When we actually break it down, their decisions are usually highly logical. Where it's like, somebody's struggling to break an addiction, and they've been making good progress on it, and then they get into a situation where the temptation of that addiction is everywhere. They're miserable, and they have no outlet, and they have no other thing that is making their life good. It's like, would you expect anyone else under those circumstances to not fall back onto their addiction? No, it's
Yeah.
just logical.
It makes perfect sense, right?
And so I wanna really emphasize, I legitimately put myself in a situation where I would not succeed. I was so perfectionist, I was so consumed with doing the things that I was doing. There was no way to build momentum. I was constantly lost, and I spiraled like that for years, from about age 20 to 25 to 27-ish.
Yeah.
25 was really the rock bottom, but I spiraled for 5 years, um, consistently getting more obsessive, consistently trying to solve problems that were beyond my scope in a way that was basically the slowest path possible. And in the midst of that, I was having all sorts of dietary issues. I was getting depressed. I was getting more lonely because when you devote that much time to your work, you don't have time to make friends.
Yep.
And it spiraled and spiraled and spiraled until I was I really just didn't know what I was going to do at this time. But I was uh rooming with a friend of mine that was one of the only people that had a memory of me in the crib. Many, he'd known me for many years, and he committed suicide. And I he was one of the most supportive people in my life. And for him to decide to pass on, and for me to stay here, well, at that point in my life, I'd learned enough about self-development to know that you could take hard moments and choose to give them meaning. And more so than choose to give them meaning, because that pisses off a lot of people. They're like, "This shit sucks. Like, I'm not gonna give it another meaning." You can choose to make the results of that event good, or you can choose to make the results of that event bad.
Sure.
And he believed in me more than anybody that I knew. He was always encouraging me. Like, he went and watched the movie Straight Outta Compton, and he came back and he's like, "I get it. You're like Dre. Like, you're trying to mastermind the things behind the scene. You'll do it, man." Like, he just believed in me so much.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, I need to make this good. I need to just use this as another commitment to find a way to make my life move in a positive direction." And that's when I started looking for the answers.
Dude, that's a pretty hard rock bottom.
Yeah, I was sick every single week. I had a compromised immune system due to dietary reactions, so that every single time a student came through the music school, they're all kids, I would catch
Oh,
anything.
endlessly. I was in pediatrics.
Yeah.
It was just like my immune system finally caught up to it, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, there was an outbreak of mono in UT at campus, and I got mono, and I'm like, "These are middle
Mm.
school kids. I don't have a girlfriend. I'm not making out with anybody. I still have mono. Like, I'm not sharing water bottles. What's happening?" Like, like, I'd catch anything.
Yep.
I was steadily my body was steadily breaking down. Anytime I tried to make music, I was recording obsessive compulsively. Um, I had already had an unmanageable amount of student debt, and my credit card was raising. I bought a car that was a lemon, and got knocked out of my bank account, and then my friend who passed was a roommate, and so I had to pick up a share of the rent. And so I moved out the day that I maxed out all of my credit cards. And so I was literally done. There
Yeah.
wasn't anything left at that point.
Dude, that's a lot to even embody, like, one of those scenarios, but putting them all together. What was even, like, your mindset like during that? Like, mentally in your body? Were you even in your body, or was it just, like, cerebral and
Yeah, yeah. So at that time, I decided that I wouldn't commit suicide. Um, and I have lots of thoughts on that, but that's sort of a whole nother topic. But it was that stage where you're driving and you're like, okay, so if this wheel swerves a little to the left, does it really matter?
Yep. Dude,
Like, does it matter?
I have literally been there where it's not
Yeah,
not considering suicide, but you're looking at all these moments of the day passing
yeah.
as slight exits if you slip into it.
Which is really dangerous because then you can start to fantasize about how
Yeah.
like people are gonna bring flowers, and you're like, "Oh, I'm important for a moment here."
Even in that
Right?
case too.
You can even fantasize to the point that you think that like this is like the one good
Yeah.
thing you could do because you'd be special for a moment or
Yeah,
something.
or, like, who even shows up to your
Yeah.
funeral, and then you're pulling that, and then
Yeah. And so I made I was but again, at that point, like I said, when I was in college, I was very into learning theory. I was like, how do I get A's? This created a lifelong pursuit of how does a human learn, which made me passionate about self-development, passionate about all the things that can help a human become better. And so even though I had not embodied all of those lessons yet, I was learning a ton. I'd learned so much. And so there were things that I knew, and like I knew that thought was dangerous.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna decide to think a different thought. I'm gonna decide to take my mind down a different path here. And there were several things like that. There were like one of the core moments socially for me was I started to notice happy people and feel resentment. And I
Yeah.
noticed I would see women that I found beautiful and that I was attracted to, and I would feel negative emotions. And that was actually another piece of the core thing. And if anybody's listening to this, like this is a thing you can spot in your own mind. If you notice yourself feeling negative emotions in response to positive stimuli, that's the moment it's time for you to start fixing things.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh, okay. This means I need to change direction. I have to find something because this is what heads you down the worst of the worst path."
Yeah. We've all been there at that moment too, I think. I think that's a very relatable moment of just even I can think of times where I saw people happy, successful, joyful, families, love, and I'm over here like, "Ugh, yuck,
Yeah.
why?" But now it's like flipping the script of where I'm at in life now, it's like, "No, that's what I'm pursuing, that's what I'm after.
Yeah.
Invite more of that into my life."
Yeah. It's actually a phenomenal metric, is your own internal response to positive stimuli.
Yeah.
It's actually a great metric. And the 2 things you can identify is when I experience positive stimuli, and by positive stimuli, I just mean like you're around person who's more successful than you are around somebody that you like, somebody that, a typically positive experience. You're at a music festival. If you're like grumbling about the parking, come on. Come on. Like if you're, something like that, and you have a negative response to the positive thing, then you know that there's something off. Or if you have an over positive response.
Yeah.
And so if you're around somebody successful and you want to follow every single business idea that they recommend, there's something off. If you're around an attractive person and you just have to have them and it's the best thing ever and you're so into it, there's something off. And so if you go too far in either of those directions, it's actually a great metric to know that there are some things that need to be adjusted inside of your own system.
For sure. And even like you were kinda hinting at it, going to both extremes actually helps you calibrate where the center is. As much as I'd like to be in homeostasis all the time, that moment that I stretch it so far left and right, now I know the boundary, so I know where the center is.
And last note on that is I also want to emphasize I'm not saying you should like be a robot all the time. Like you know, like that's not what we're aiming for. It's balance is not robotness. I'm messing up my words here. You know, to be in balance is not to be uniform or just still. It's not stillness. It's not any of that. It's actual balance of extremes in such a way that you can channel your energy into a positive direction.
I love to use the photographer video for that, for instance, you
I,
know?
I said that for all the Stoics out there. Like, you can take Stoicism too far. Go on.
It's like a simple like, you look at a picture, right? It's like, if there's all whites and highlights, you got a polar bear in a snowstorm, right?
Yeah.
And then if it's too dark, you got, you know, a coffee bean on a black table.
Yep.
But when you balance contrast, highlights, shadows, light, dark, and put it all together with color, it's a beautiful image, right? And it's like to what we kind of talked about earlier, the specifics. You're just looking at the darkness, you're going to see all the darkness. But when you zoom out and you see the whole picture, you're like, wow, this is a beautiful piece of art that your life's transitioning through.
Yes.
So where did that transition lead you from the just being essentially drained, burnt out, tired, exhausted, your friend passing away, like, financial heaviness, like, where did that lead you?
Yeah. So I want to caveat this next part with I legitimately work with some of the highest and most ambitious high performers on earth. This is what I do. And so the lessons that I learned, and I am extremely ambitious and I constantly seek high performance. And so these lessons, what I'm about to describe, it is counterintuitive to a passionate, ambitious person. It is counterintuitive.
I love it, that's the best advice. That is
Yes.
that is like an anchor of the advice to lean into, in my opinion, because
Yes.
everybody puts out the same thing, but it's the same broken system. So what
Yes.
system did you create here?
So the first big thing that I did when I decided to really change direction, and it was one of the hardest things that I did. It's similar to some of the ego death stuff that people describe, but it took on a slightly different tone for me. And this was from an angle of self-love, was I realized I can't do what I'm trying to do.
Beautiful.
And this just that sentence triggers so many positive self-love plastic hippies, right? You know, like so many affirmations all the way, people. The one of the most useful things I did at this stage of my life was I looked at all the things I was trying to do and I said, "You've been trying to do this for years and it's not working. You are not succeeding at this. And beyond you are not succeeding at this, you don't know how to succeed at this." And so this wasn't a technical, you can't do this ever, but it was a legitimate, like, you can't do this right now.
Yeah.
And I used the word can't on purpose because a lot of affirmation people, they like to really avoid that word. They like to say, "Oh, never use the word can't." And I had to use the word can't.
To stop all that momentum that you kept continually trying to push, but it's like, you had no positive feedback saying, "Josh, this is for you."
To stop the obsession.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Look, you want to be walking on red carpets and waving to tens of thousands of fans on a stage, and you can't pay your toll bills."
Ooh, that hits home on the ego, right?
And this was actually the realization that made it possible for me to move forward. And there's a very important reason why. Is there's more than one way to focus on a long-term dream. One way is you focus on a vision, it inspires and excites you, it energizes you, and you do your best to embody that vision, and it empowers you to move forward. This actually is how manifestation works, is you try to create the future in the present. And then you make yourself into that person, and then you move in that direction. That is one way to do it. But another way, and this is the way so many people do it, like many people don't do it the healthy manifestation way. The way they do it is they hear, oh, you need to have a vision, you need to have a big goal. And what happens is they start to envision the big goal. They start to feel the emotion. And their body, their system, their ego all lines with that big goal. And then, here's the important point, every step required to get there starts to feel wrong because they feel like they should already be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to be a movie star and you're walking on red carpets and you're washing dishes in the back of Joe's Crab Shack, then every dish feels like a failure.
Yeah.
It feels embarrassing.
100%.
And so I was at a stage in my life where I needed to put an extra $5 on my credit card because that would be an accomplishment. And every time I did that, I felt shame because I felt like I was supposed to be. Like, it wasn't just like ego and like, I deserve it. Like, I felt guilty. I felt like I was supposed to be the person who could pay it all off in one check. And so as a result, I avoided paying an extra $5 on my credit card. And when I shifted this to say, oh, look, you can't do this. All of a sudden, all of the things that I had been studying about learning theory, all the things I'd been studying about human development came together and I was able to apply them on myself. And I was good because I'd been one of the most popular music teachers for like 5 years at that point, right? No, I guess 3 years. And then I did it for another 4 or so. And throughout all of that, I was constantly like curious and watching the kids and being like, what makes them actually absorb knowledge? What makes them progress? And I often joke that like today I help CEOs with the same thing I used to help 9-year-olds with because the fundamentals are all the same. And so I started applying that stuff to myself, and I could actually ask the question, okay, like as opposed to you're supposed to be shooting for these big goals like everybody tells you to, what would you do with an inept person who can barely do anything, who's sick all the time, he's completely in debt to a point that he can't manage, and he doesn't know how to make any more money? How would you move that person forward?
How did you move that person forward?
Well, it started with taking one trash bag a week out of the house because that was all I could manage. And my closest friend had just committed suicide, and I was in that house.
I mean, you're peeling yourself off the carpet at this point.
Yeah. So moving was an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I don't mean moving. I mean motion.
Yeah, getting off the couch, getting out of bed,
Yeah,
doing
that was
something
an
with your life.
accomplishment. And so it was a trash bag a week. And then it was daily walks. And not, "Hey, we're gonna walk 2 miles and listen to the birds." No, it was like, can you walk the block outside of your house, back and forth, and then back inside? Can you do that? And then it was tiny little diet tweaks, which, took a long time to figure out. It was tiny little behavior tweaks, little by little. And I'd learned so many tools. I'd been studying Eastern philosophy. I'd been studying meta-learning, human development, cognitive behavioral therapy, and all the things. But I didn't have any of them in perspective. I just had the knowledge. I didn't know how to apply the skill sets because skill sets have to be applied in a linear fashion. There's no you just get it inside of a skill set. Any moment that you think you just get it inside of a skill set, if you're skateboarding and you suddenly realize you know how to do a trick, if you're playing chess and you suddenly realize how to win a game, all of that is the continual addition of microlinear actions. And they just happen to add up enough that you had this moment of aha. Aha is a combination of microlinear actions.
And the brain recognizing the pattern finally and being like, you got it.
Yeah. And so I had lots of like theoretical aha moments, but I had no embodied aha because I wasn't giving myself small enough actions to get there. And so I started just giving myself smaller steps. And then I went through all sorts of other cool practices. I became a breathwork aficionado. I've developed my own breathwork methodologies. I found that state change is incredibly important to heal the human body, process emotions, and grow in different ways. But but the core thing that it started with was this realization, and then coming down to baby steps.
Dude, and even hearing you talk about the baby steps there, I've been in a very similar situation, and it's like the cure to the all or nothing mentality of like, here's this massive goal in the future. I have, whatever our unrealistic timeline was to get there, right? We're
Yeah,
doing anything and everything versus now I have no energy,
yeah,
no time, no emotion, like nothing.
yeah,
And then those little micro steps
yeah.
showed you so much.
And if you're listening to this and you think it sounds juvenile, or I mean, maybe,
I
right?
don't think,
If you think it sounds like silly or simplistic, then you probably don't understand baby steps.
yeah.
Because there are different levels to understanding what that basic concept in and of itself means. And and almost nobody knows how to break down actions into micro actions in the way that they can actually triage and identify the things that are stopping them from making progress.
Yeah, I say most of the even an area I think a lot of people pitfall is they get the concept, but they haven't integrated the concept into their reality.
Yeah.
And it's like, once again, trying to focus on this system that has so many leaks, and then you're getting frustrated that you're following the system, but you haven't actually learned how to use
Yeah.
it properly.
Yeah, and people listen to the idea of baby steps and they're like, "Oh, that's great." And they go, "Okay, so let me try to do a smaller thing." And then they go, "I'm bored." And so, welcome to Eastern philosophy and meditation and awareness. Like there's a lot to what is required to actually be able to implement baby steps in a reasonable manner.
Mhm. And it's so hard, like, you even nailed it. It's like, why do people not do baby steps? Because they get bored. They're looking for this massive dopamine payoff versus by doing this simple thing every day and repeating it so many times that it becomes second nature autopilot.
Yeah. Yeah, and so one of the things I'm working on, I haven't published it yet. But
Ooh, got a little gold here.
here. Yeah, so this is the nth draft. I'm not all done with perfectionism.
Me neither. I will never be done
Yeah,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah. And that's another thing I teach is like be you. Like there's ways to work with you, but this is the nth draft of a book that I'm working on, which is called "Pull Back to Push Harder: How to Get More Out of Doing Less." And it's a book all about limits. And the fundamental concept in here that I teach is that we all have a comfort line between boredom and anxiety. And this is one of the fundamental balance of states that exists is between these two things. And so we'd have different words for these two things. Anxiety is too much, newness, overwhelm. Like there's lots of words for it. And boredom has lots of words of like, I've seen this before, old hat, too familiar, a pattern I already
Nothing
know,
to do.
nothing to do, right? And and remember I said that like I took self-development literally and it kicked me in the butt. So most self-development says push yourself. And so what most people do is they live in this balance, this thin line between boredom and anxiety. And the way they try to develop is they try to push themselves upward into the experience of anxiety. This is necessary because anxiety is where new things are. And so it's a required step of learning. It is necessary. But then they get the new thing and they do like a little bit of integration with it and they go, "Okay, I've got it. So I should probably go to the new thing that's next."
And they're stacking anxiety.
Yes. And so they start to define their lives by like literally their moral value system is I'm only good if I'm pushing myself. I'm only good if I'm pushing into the anxiety. I'm only good if I'm overwhelmed, right? And the problem with this is when you are only pushing into anxiety, when you're only pushing into newness, into new things, trying to grow in whatever way you can, more effort, your expansion as a human being doesn't happen. Only your comfort level changes.
Yeah, I
And
could
so and if you envision who you are as this band of area between boredom and anxiety, if you're only pushing yourself up, what happens is it remains this thin band of tolerance. And you just become able to tolerate more difficult things. But your boredom levels rate reach upward with your ability to tolerate the anxiety. And so your ability to tolerate doesn't change. And so to create a balanced individual who can tolerate more life experiences, and tolerance is important because that's how you get enjoyment. If you can tolerate more things in life, then you have to spend time, and it's a deeper thing to explain it all, but like 20 to 30% of your time pushing into anxiety, 60 to 70% of your time should be pushing into boredom. And if you actually get yourself able to tolerate more anxiety and more boredom, then you are able to tolerate more of life.
yeah.
And when you have that, you develop a larger area of bandwidth in which you are capable of taking action. And that larger area of bandwidth is what unlocks the ability to achieve mastery in your pursuit.
And I think I saw this with one of your videos too with I think the 2 pencils and the rubber band as you're pulling it up and down. But I think the craziest thing about that video, and even in you describing this, was, like, how do you level up? The quick slide of the rubber band, right? It's like you're on a whole new level, but you're still maxing out that tension, but now you're on a different level, you're in a different gear. So if you're in a car, you're going from 6,000 RPMs back down to 2 with the same stretch and flexibility.
Yeah. How do you really level up where you don't leave behind everything that you had before? How do you learn to be able to tolerate being in a boardroom and relaxing by the fireplace?
Man, I'm still learning that one. That's my greatest accomplishment right now. That's something I'm trying to achieve is, yeah,
Yeah.
is literally getting comfortable with boredom because
Yeah.
to your degree, I'll push the extreme of 110% every day for 4 out of 7, and now I'm like, "Okay, we gotta recharge." So now we gotta push the extreme of rest to that degree as well to balance it. Otherwise, my rubber band's pulling up, but it's not coming back down, which is losing
Yeah.
its tension.
Yeah, I used to do creator grill nights where I'd have content creators come over and hang out in a backyard, and I'd grill for them, and there'd be a campfire, and I remembered being super puzzled the first time 'cause, I had a campfire, and I sat down by the campfire, and, like, 20 minutes later, everybody was gone except for me and a friend who was sort of an outdoors guy, and we were still sitting there chilling by the fire. And at first, I'm like, "Oh my god, am I a pariah? Nobody likes me? Or is it the smoke? These city people can't handle smoke?" And it was like, "Oh, they don't know how to sit by the fire. They don't know how to sit there and stare at a
They're
coal."
constantly going and doing.
They're like, because I saw, like, how quickly all their phones came out.
Yep.
You know, they were like, "Oh my god," and it was this rigid, shaky tension. Like, they were having anxiety attacks hanging out by the campfire, and they didn't even know it. Because they thought they just needed to be in anxiety all the time. And so I kind of dropped a little crumb earlier about the concept of mastery,
Mhm.
and I want to show where that
Pick
crumb
it back up
leads.
now.
So why does this matter? Because a lot of high performing people, they're like, why do I need to learn how to slow down? And
Exactly.
like I have this conversation all day long
I
because
can
this
imagine.
is how because I help ambitious people, and you need to know how it'll serve you, right? Right. That the number one thing somebody wonders when they're like considering meditation or psychedelics, and they're a type A person is like, well, what if I lose my drive and I never want to succeed again? Right? Like that's their top wonder. And to that, of course, it's like that's gonna happen, like, good luck. But where this is relevant in this conversation is, and just bear with me, and it'll come together.
Following you.
Nobody wants to watch a musician stand on stage and play a piece of music that is so difficult they can just barely manage it.
Yeah.
What will happen is if you go to that concert, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna listen to it be a little bit out of tune, a little bit beyond their ability, and you're going to feel some level of respect for what they attempted. a little bit of compassion for their embarrassment, and then you're never going to come to a show ever again.
100%. I actually saw a show most recently. I was excited about this musician. Came to Kansas City, small market for this guy. The worst show I've ever seen. I love
Yeah.
the music. The music was phenomenal. The piano, the everything was phenomenal.
Mhm.
There was no entertaining. He was literally
Yes.
up there just playing and we were watching. And I was
Yes.
like, could have done this at home with the lights low, less people, and my
Yes.
own drinks and my own food and my own comfort. But
Yes. And nobody wants to buy a product that somebody who's providing it can just barely manufacture, because every fifth product is a little bit off.
yeah,
Nobody wants to buy a service that's so difficult that somebody can just barely deliver that service.
yeah, that's a good perspective.
What we want to do is go to the concert and watch somebody play a piece of music that is so easy to them that they can dance and emote and enjoy and express. And this could be a very difficult piece of music, right? Like maybe you're a fan of classical music that's like highly technical. You still want to see somebody play something that is so within their realm of competence that they own it with their chest out.
Mhm.
And you want to buy the product that is so dependable that it's always going to work. And you want to buy the service that's so within the person's realm of competence that they surprise and delight you with its delivery.
Yeah,
And you can't do that if you can't handle being bored. Because the only way you can deliver something like that is if it's easy for you.
dude, this tracks to a creative I was consulting one day. He blew my mind and he even said, kinda like the shiny plane syndrome, right? Like, we're going to this island over here, on the way over, a plane drops a shiny object, and you have the option, do you still go to island A or do you go back to B, right? And he's like, the hardest thing creatives and a general have is they get so excited and inspired with what's new, but halfway through, they lose all the inspiration, all the gas, and it comes down to them. Are they gonna complete it or are they gonna ditch it and reload, reload, reload? And I think the common cycle is to reload to, "Oh, yeah, that was a little harder and a little more work than I thought it was gonna be, so let's just do something new."
Yes.
And then that becomes its own cycle as well.
Yes. And so to bring this back to the turning point in my life and the path that I took ever since, and that I've been helping others take ever since at a very high level, is when I had that turnaround and I realized that I couldn't do what I was trying to do, I started asking the question, what can I do?
Mhm.
And so it started with a trash bag a week. And then it grew. I grew my capability. I paid off my debts while I was still living on the poverty line. I hadn't yet learned how to make money, but I managed to become debt free. I was still on the poverty line. I became debt free because I learned how to save money because I could do that.
Yeah.
Over time, I learned how to increase my income. I I did things that I could do. And now I work with people who are moving things at the $1 billion level. I work with people who are moving things at the billion view level.
Yeah.
And every single time the conversation is what is possible, what can be done. There's a place for moonshots, and that's great. But what I've found is a lot of these people who are prone to overwhelm and super high performing and super ambitious, they're gonna do moonshots regardless.
Yeah, and that's what I was even getting at is it's really cool to even see your story and hear this story of the high achiever epically just felling, 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 felling.
Yeah.
But the transformation
Yeah.
is helping these extremely high level people manage their performance
Yeah.
and make it sustainable.
Yeah. And
And
so
that and
is so I'll share the one last piece that
yeah.
I'd love to share about this is it led me to one of the other counterintuitive discoveries, which is the thing that you worry about is usually the thing that you don't need to worry about.
Ooh, that's a mind puzzle in my head.
So if you worry about whether or not you were too impatient, you're probably patient enough.
God. Okay,
Because
so
you're a person who worries about patience. And the people who are impatient, it doesn't cross their minds. And if you are, worried about like, oh, was I kind enough in that conversation? The people who aren't kind don't think about whether or not they should be kind. That's not a thing.
Yeah, I see where you're going. So if you have those thoughts come up, you're actually very aware of it.
Yeah,
But if the thoughts don't if they don't appear, then you're the one dodging it and
yeah.
not very self-aware.
And so if you're tired most of the day and you're constantly wondering if you're working hard enough, you are. You have other things you need to solve, right?
I'm gonna take that one home with me. That is the perfect
Yeah.
one because I talk about the trap. I'll be sitting on the couch Friday, Saturday, exhausted, and like, man, what could I be doing right now? There's got to be something I could be doing.
Yeah.
And what I've had to divert myself back to is there is something. It's called rest. Sit your butt down, be
Yes.
bored because boredom actually is dopamine being stimulated or created.
That's the job.
And I'm literally, yeah, and that's the mindset I even had to get into as someone who is also a very workaholic tendency
Yes.
is like, all right, your job, you crush it. The job you need to start crushing is resting,
The job
eating
is the
healthy,
rest.
sustainability. If it's not
Yes.
sustainable, don't do it. That's the
Yes.
job is sustainability.
Yes. This is the frame I take with a lot of high performers is like it's your job. It's not your reward. It's do the thing that will get you the optimal outcome. If rest will get you the biggest outcome, then that's your job. That's what you must do. And just to tie in the moonshots, last piece, if you're worried about whether or not you're doing enough moonshot thinking, you're probably doing too much.
Yeah. And if you think about that too, like moonshots are, I mean, that's huge, right? In any business, right? But it's like if you're continually thinking of something extravagant happening at different angles, like how exhausting does that have to be for your mindset and your nervous system?
Yeah. And so you'll notice a lot of the things that I described as you pulled me through my story here were things that were the opposite of the common narrative, right? Things like slow down, accept that you can't do something as opposed to believe that you can. Um, uh, if you're worried about the thing, just you are probably already doing it.
Yeah.
You should be worried about the opposite thing, in fact. These are opposites. And so I'm very obsessed with the concept of polarity. I love it. And I think that it helps people find balance and move forward. And so that was the essence of how I brought myself to where I am today is through a balance of learning theory and polarity. Learning theory being what is the practical next best step, and polarity being how do I decide which steps I should be taking based on what is in balance or out of balance. And that led me to a life that I live today, which is one I'm very happy with. And over and over again, I see when people are willing to look at what is in balance and what is out of balance, and they're able to take the tiny steps, whether it's in their own mind, it's in their relationship, or it's in their business. If they are willing to do those things, they can create a beautiful life.
And just to even tack on some value here with everything that you said is like, what are the three main things that you'll see a client need to essentially recalibrate in their life?
It differs a lot because burnout is a holistic problem, right? It's something that is it affects every aspect of your life, and so it differs a lot. But some of the core things that people struggle with is the "Am I working hard enough?" question, right? Um, and then based on where I am working, what level of creative thinking and delegation should I be doing? Right? Like if you're at the bottom level, you can't necessarily delegate to a bunch of team members,
Yeah.
but there are ways you can think that are gonna make you able to do less and get more results. If you're at a high level, you should be delegating more. So that's a big one is just the overall work thing. And then the next one is actually becoming more outcome focused in a hyper realistic way, meaning what is going to, and you touched on it a minute ago, what is actually going to get me an outcome? Is it staying up 5 hours longer? Or is it going the hell to bed?
Yeah, what activity will push the needle?
Yeah. And when, because if you're super passionate and super ambitious and you really want to make things happen in the world, then you need a developmental model that aligns with that desire. And so what I say is like, great, you want to accomplish great things. Let's be real about what will enable you to accomplish great things. And so when you start asking that question obsessively, then you start um, uh, uh, just being more real with yourself about what you should really be doing. And you tend to do things that make you burn out less. And the last one that I'd say that is a lesson that really helps people is learn how to do the thing that makes you want to do another thing.
Mm, that one hits.
Learn how to take the step that enables you to take another step. Paint the painting that makes you want to paint another painting. This is one of the most powerful things that breaks people out of perfectionism and what I like to call masterpiece syndrome, where it's like, this one has to be the best. It's going to be my, magnum opus. Is ask the question, hey, if you did everything required to make this come true, would you be super thrilled, super proud of yourself, and so energized that you want to go in and make something else? Or are you going to be so exhausted and drained by the process of building this masterpiece that you're going to feel like you just want to stop for a while? And yes, there are people who operate in sprints. I do too. This is a more meta concept than the sprint concept. Sprints are important. There's a way to do them. But if you look at the things that you're doing and you realize that, like, oh, each time I do this, I'm a little bit more tired, then this is just logistically not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that what you said earlier, what can I not do or what can't I do? It's
Yeah.
showing you this is not aligned with you.
Yeah. And so what I recommend is I recommend people to go through the things that they have assigned for themselves and see if they can engineer a series of actions that they need to take, that when they are done with those actions, they would want to take more actions the next day.
That's awesome. That is a that is a beautiful mindset of even just the simplicity of that, of flipping it on its back or taking the polarity of it and going through the other side. It's, I mean, it's the simplicity makes it replicatable, and I'm sure that's why people are so drawn to you and your content is it takes something so complex and just systemizes it.
Yeah. You can make life work for you.
And like you said, it's like the genius in content, and even as you were talking about it, it's like people buy the products that are the most dependable and create what they say they're gonna do. There's no guessing of like, "Oh, it's worked about 75% of the time. The other 25 we don't know." That's a no, and that tells people to push away versus figure out what you can do. Focus on building it sustainably. Find more interest in what's lighting you up and lean into that, which is counterintuitive to the world that we live in.
Super counterintuitive.
But I see that the value in all you do and your path to get there was very unique, as you said, and I'm so glad we recorded this on camera to capture the essence and the story, but then also the practicality of the teacher it helped you become and the people that you're continually sharing that message which over and over again, which seems to bring you a lot of fulfillment. With that being said, I got one more question for you. What is the meaning of life from your perspective? I thought this would be the most fun question to ask you, so I saved it for last.
Yeah, I mean, people get meaning in different ways. I really do like Jordan Peterson's hey, if you want to find out the meaning of life, ask a young couple with their first newborn baby, and they'll give you the real answer, which is, what are you doing asking me these questions? Go away. I got to change a diaper. Meaning, the meaning of life is to live it, right? Is to be so fully in it that you're doing it. But beyond that, I think a meaningful life is built up of meaningful actions. And I think that you can get to meaningful actions through asking the question, what do I want? And combining it with what would be right and good to have in this world. And yes, we could go down the rabbit hole of debating what is right and what is good. But as a general guideline, I think you can get really far with that simple structure. And since we only have like 30 seconds left, I can easily, dive into the topic of religion and share mine. So we got plenty of time for it. Which is, I've now boiled down what I believe my religion is to be the guy who God would want to have a beer with.
Dude, I love that.
And you can make all the semantic arguments and all the religious arguments you want about, you know, what is God, what is friend, what is beer, what is all the rest.
Exactly.
But if you look at a lot of the spiritual stories, a lot of the lessons in life, the truly loved characters that were humans in the stories, the truly loved ones, they were the god's friend, or they were loved by the god. And so in the Abrahamic stories, Abraham was God's only friend, David was the man after God's own heart. And you can find these in other stories where the human in the story is someone who is related to by the spiritual entity from a place of love and friendship. And so, what would your life look like if you were aware of and aligned with the highest good that you know of, and that highest good was conscious and sentient, and it viewed you with favor?
Sounds like alignment to me.
Sounds like alignment.
Simplicity of alignment. Bypassing all the fears and anything in your way of what your truest mission and essence is.
Be in tune with what you want, what is real, and what direction you're moving. Go do that.
Mic drop. If there was a drop, I don't want to drop your mic. I think that's a solid ending to all this.
Perfect.
I think you just tied it up very well and we did this full journey today. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to interview me. This was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. If anybody wants to find me on social media, go to Josh Terry Plays across all social media. Instagram usually is the best, but anywhere. And thanks again for all your fantastic questions.
Thank you, Josh.
My pleasure.